He used to sit by the window every night, staring at the lights of the city, as if they held the answers to all the questions buried in his heart. His name was Ayayan. There was a time when he had dreams so loud that the world couldn't ignore them. As a child, he promised himself a life filled with meaning, adventure, and peace. A life where he wouldn't settle for ordinary. But years passed, and that promise began to fade. The noise of the world grew louder than the voice inside him. Responsibilities piled up like stones on his shoulders. He got a job, paid bills, smiled at people he didn't like, and pretended he was fine. The boy who once dreamed of changing the world now struggled just to make it through the week. One evening, after another long, exhausting day, Ayan walked home through the same crowded streets he had known all his life. The air smelled of rain, and his reflection on the wet pavement looked tired, older, and distant. He stopped for a moment under a flickering streetlight and asked himself a question he hadn't asked in years. Is this the life I promised myself? The silence that followed was heavier than any answer. That night, he couldn't sleep. Memories came rushing back. The time he stayed up all night drawing plans for his own design studio. The times he imagined helping others create beauty out of nothing. He remembered how his mother used to say, Ayan, life doesn't wait for the ready. It rewards the brave. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten those words. Somewhere, he had lost himself. But that night, as rain tapped gently against his window, something inside him stirred again. A quiet determination he hadn't felt in years. He realized he had spent too long surviving and too little living. He whispered to himself, "Never forget the life you promised to yourself." And for the first time in a long time, he meant it. The next morning wasn't magical. There was no sudden burst of light or grand revelation, but something had changed. When he looked in the mirror, his eyes weren't as dull. They carried a spark. He still had the same job, the same routine, but a different mindset. Instead of complaining about what was missing, he started working on what he could build. He woke up an hour earlier every day to sketch designs. He used lunch breaks to research freelancing platforms, and late at night, he read about people who had started from nothing. Every day, he reminded himself of that promise. Months passed, and the tiny progress he made began to show. His first online client paid him less than what he earned in a single day at his office job, but it felt like a fortune. Because it wasn't about money. It was proof that he could still build something of his own. Slowly, that small spark turned into a fire. The more he worked on his dream, the more alive he felt. It wasn't easy. There were nights of doubt, failures that shook him, and days when he almost gave up. But every time he was tempted to quit, he would whisper again, "Never forget the life you promised to yourself." And somehow, he found the strength to keep going. Then came the day his company announced layoffs. People panicked, but Ayan didn't. For the first time in his life, he wasn't afraid. He had something of his own now, a dream that was growing roots. When his turn came and he received the news, he simply smiled. Losing his job didn't feel like an end anymore. It felt like a door opening. He packed his things, walked out of that building, and breathed in the city air as if he owned it. He spent the next few weeks working from his small apartment, living off savings, and pouring everything into his projects. He reached out to clients across the world, shared his designs, and slowly built a name for himself. But success wasn't the real victory. The victory was rediscovering who he was. The victory was waking up excited again. Still, the journey wasn't without struggle. There were months when money ran low, when his laptop broke, when clients disappeared without paying. There were days he questioned everything, sitting alone at his desk, staring at unfinished designs. But every time doubt crept in, he would close his eyes and imagine the boy he once was, the boy who dreamed without fear. That image kept him moving. He realized the life you promise yourself is not a gift you're given. It's a battle you fight every single day. One night, Almost 2 years after he started his journey, Ayan received a message from an international design company that had discovered his work online. They wanted to collaborate. He sat in silence for a long time, the glow of the laptop screen reflecting on his face. He thought about every night of exhaustion, every moment of self-doubt, every time he almost surrendered. And then he smiled, because he knew that this moment of recognition wasn't just success. It was a reminder of everything he had promised to himself. When he finally visited his old office to meet a colleague, he noticed how everything looked smaller. The people, the walls, the same coffee smell. It all felt distant. His colleague asked, "How did you do it, Ayan? You actually built your own life." Ayan smiled and said softly, "I stopped forgetting who I was. That's all." Years later, Ayan would stand on a stage, sharing his story with a hall full of young dreamers. He would look into their eyes and say, "You owe it to yourself to become the person you once dreamed of being. You owe it to that version of you who believed anything was possible. The world will try to make you forget, but don't. Never forget the life you promised to yourself." His words echoed through the room, landing in hearts that had almost given up. After the event, he walked outside under a sky full of stars. The same city lights shimmered in the distance, but now they felt like old friends. He realized the journey was never about reaching some perfect destination. It was about remembering what matters, holding on to that fire, and keeping faith even when the world says it's foolish. The life he had promised himself wasn't about luxury or fame. It was about freedom, authenticity, and peace. And now, standing there, he knew he had finally kept that promise. But not everyone does. Too many people bury their promises under fear, routine, and doubt. They tell themselves it's too late. They convince themselves they're too old, too busy, too stuck. But the truth is, life doesn't end until you stop trying. The dream you once had doesn't disappear. It just waits for you to remember it. It waits for you to take that first small step. Maybe you can't change everything overnight, but you can start. You can wake up a little earlier, read that book, send that email, learn that skill, make that call. Progress begins with movement, not perfection. Ayan's story is not about luck, it's about choice. Every day, he chose to honor his promise instead of his fear. That's what made the difference. Because success doesn't belong to the smartest or the richest. It belongs to the ones who don't forget. The ones who keep showing up even when the world forgets their name. The ones who dare to believe they still can. And maybe that's what life really is. A series of promises we make to ourselves. Promises to be honest, to be brave, to keep trying even when we're tired. And when we forget, we lose ourselves. But when we remember, we rise again. So wherever you are, whatever you're facing, remember the promise you once made. Don't let it die in silence. Don't let fear write your story. The person you dreamed of becoming is still waiting inside you. The future you imagined is still possible. The life you promised to yourself is not gone. It's calling your name. So rise. Begin again. Chase it with everything you have. Fail, learn, rise again. The journey will hurt, but it will also heal. And one day, you'll look back and smile. Not because it was easy, but because you kept your word. And that's the truest kind of victory there is. Never forget the life you promised to yourself. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content that inspires you to keep your promises. We'll see you in the next one.